In this Rick Talk, we're going to talk about some basics of handling large libraries of type styles or fonts that are in your computer, and certainly in graphics. It's not that big of an issue, I suppose, with folks that do basic word processing, because you may only have a handful of fonts or type styles that you need to be concerned with. But in graphics, in particular with graphics, you can imagine that many times we have thousands, literally thousands of type styles or fonts that we can have and get access to, and print shops need to keep track of for their clients, and the different type styles that their clients use. And of course, we can download from so many sources now. Don't even have to really buy them. myfonts.com and dufffonts.com, a couple of the more well-known ones. So it's because we have, in many cases, such large libraries that of type styles and fonts that we need to pay more attention to this aspect of things. And the basic concept, or a basic concept that we need to be concerned about, is that, of course, every time we start up our computer, or we open up a software program, or we open up another software program, and then we open up our email software program, all of these things are loaded into your system in RAM, random access memory. And going way back, we talked a little bit about that. It's so important that that's really where you do most of your work, is in this imaginary sort of area called RAM. And we never have enough RAM, especially with graphics and multimedia. So, and what happens is every font or type style that is available when you start your computer takes up a little bit of RAM. And individually, they don't take up that much, but once again, if we start talking about hundreds or even thousands of type styles and fonts, altogether, they can take up a pretty big chunk of valuable RAM. And especially for graphics programs, we never have enough. So fonts, like any software program, are loaded into the system level, meaning at the basic level of your computer. A type style or font, if it is available in one software program on your computer, it will be available in all the programs. They don't work on individual software programs. Okay, so they're all in the system level of your computer and available to all the programs of your computer. And one of the other basic concepts here that many folks and certainly students run into is that when you move from one computer to another, doesn't matter whether it's Mac to Mac or Mac to PC or vice versa, or PC to PC, if I used a particular type style in creating a document and I then move to a different computer to open up and or work on that document, if the type style or font that I chose is not available on that second computer, it will not be loaded, and it will be substituted. It will always be substituted, whether you do that manually, or what happens most of the time is it automatically takes place. And quite often, or most of the time, when a type style is automatically substituted by your computer, it is not a they're not automatically looking for the computer isn't automatically looking for the same style of font, and it tends to substitute or replace it with some skinny, bland type style. Might be Arial or one of those type things, and it certainly will disrupt and mess up your document visually. Okay, and even if I go to another computer, the font that I used is not there, but I am able to find a font on this second computer that says it's the same name, it may still have subtle differences that may cause serious problems in the look of the document and in the flow of the text. And think in terms of long documents like brochures or books. A subtle change could be disastrous, and quite often, if it's subtle, you might not even see it, and the print shop might not see it, and then suddenly after the document is output at the print shop, when it's too late and a lot of time and money has been invested, somebody realizes that that headline that's supposed to be at the top of page 12 is in fact at the bottom of page 11. So that's what we mean when we say it can cause some serious problems in the look and flow of your text. Now, there are basically at this time three main categories of type styles, and this is really important, and it's a little bit of added information about the some of the issues that related to Macs really getting a big head start in the publishing and the desktop publishing and printing arena. And some of it has to do with these fonts. So we have basically three different kinds of fonts. And the primary one traditionally in publishing and printing, professional output and printing, are called PostScript Type 1 fonts. And there again is the term that you've seen again and again, PostScript. And these fonts were early on the most widely used in the professional arena, and especially on the Macs. And then somewhere along the line, I think it was Microsoft and may have been actually Apple, together tried to come up with another style or technology of fonts, and it had some positive attributes, and these are called TrueType fonts. TrueType fonts, and they had some advantages, but the bottom line is they never took hold in the professional arena, and it's because the whole industry had gotten off to a fast start with PostScript technology, and all of the output machines and printing devices were optimized to handle and work with and read PostScript fonts from the get-go. And as I said, because there were a few advantages of TrueType fonts, they early on were brought into the PC market. And so they basically, that became their domain. Well, because as I just said, PostScript fonts were what the professional industry and the Macs were using. The fact that PCs adopted TrueType font technology, that actually added to them being slow to gain ground in the professional industry. Okay, and so all these little things add up to help us understand the history of desktop publishing, and which is really 20 years old. then in particular, when Microsoft created in the early 90s the Microsoft Suite for Macs, what would happen, or what typically happens, is when you load software, really any kind of software on a Mac or a PC, what happens is often, so many things are going on behind the scenes that you're not even really aware of. And one of those is that often many type styles or fonts will get loaded automatically into your computer. And that was the case, for instance, when the Microsoft Suite was adopted for the Macs. Suddenly, where Macs generally had primarily all PostScript Type 1 fonts, they now had all of these TrueType fonts loaded into the system. And to make things more complicated, Mac PostScript fonts can't be loaded on a PC, and TrueType PC fonts can't be loaded on a Mac. So you have two different technologies, and each has its own version for the Mac or the PC platform. So it just really just makes it a real hassle of sorts to manage these things. And a few years ago, a third technology for fonts came along, and once again this was created by Adobe. And originally the PostScript fonts were primarily the land of Adobe, and they created them. And anyway, so they went back to the drawing table with all these hassles of cross platforms and different kinds of fonts. Fonts, millions of folks, especially with PCs and now with Macs, using, in many cases not even realizing, they're using TrueType fonts in their documents. They take their documents to the print shop, and the print shop has to convert or replace those fonts with PostScript fonts, because that's what they are typically used to using. So it adds one more step and one more wrinkle in the production process, and that is especially where I used one version of Times Roman, and especially if it's a TrueType font, and I take the document to the print shop. They don't have the TrueType, or they need to simply convert it to PostScript, and so they convert it to we got Times Roman in PostScript fonts. Well, again, that might be just some minor subtle variation in the coding and the technology, and that's where you can end up with one of those disasters. The flow of the text changes ever so slightly, and it hyphenates words, or it puts, again, a headline that's supposed to be at the top of one page at the bottom of another page, and suddenly we have a disaster. So Adobe went back to the drawing board, and they came up with open fonts. And they're the newest kind of fonts. Probably eventually that is all we'll have, but for the moment we've got all three. What makes the open fonts so attractive and good is that they have all of the attributes of PostScript fonts, okay, which again the desktop publishing, multimedia, and print shops are using and prefer, and they are cross-platform. So in fact, if I use an open font on a PC document, I can load that font, that very font, onto a Mac, and there'd be no problems. And that's what makes this really interesting. I'm going to jump over for a second, as a matter of fact, to Illustrator, and I want to show you something that many of you may have not even realized before, and that is that these different font styles or type styles, all without you realizing it. Let's go right up here to our main menu with under type, and we'll go to font, and look, have you ever noticed that in fact there are all these little logos here in the type style library? And I want to show you, get to it here real quick. Here you go. Right here is a perfect example on my machine. As a matter of fact, on my big machine that I do all my professional work on, I actually have gone in and consciously unloaded all of the TrueType fonts, so that I only have PostScript fonts and open fonts, so that I don't make the mistake and inadvertently use a TrueType font. But here on this computer, here, notice these little logos to the left of the different fonts. And you see the TrueType is the little double T, the little gray and blue TT, and the red A, which stands for Adobe, is the symbol that you will always see next to PostScript Type 1 fonts. And on the same token, you can then see this O, sort of half black and half aqua O, and that indicates that that type style is an open font. And so something that in basic desktop publishing, or in-house little work doesn't really matter, suddenly becomes a big issue in the professional arena. Okay, so let's jump back, and then a couple of other important ideas here, and the management, as I started out saying, trying to make the point that large libraries of fonts, whether they're on your machine at home or at a print shop, can, as we said, take up so much RAM that what we have is software programs that manage our library of fonts. And there are third-party commercial software programs. Typically on the Mac side, or one of the primary ones used for many years, and I still use, is a program called Suitcase. And there are several others out there. And now even the Mac operating system has something similar to Suitcase built into the operating system that's used to manage the fonts, called FontBook, and it just comes with your system software. And when that first came out, it caused a lot of uproar, similar to some of the things years ago that we heard that Microsoft tried to have everything built into their system software, and all of the third-party companies screamed bloody murder, saying that they were trying to squeeze them out of the market by integrating this software that they provide and make money on, a big industry, right into the operating system. And that was one of the big arguments against FontBook in Macs. But it's there, and it works pretty well. But I have to admit, I'm pretty comfortable, and there are a few more tools in Suitcase, and it's a utility, so it doesn't cost that much money. Utilities are third-party small software programs that we all have in our computers. Antivirus software and things of that nature are all considered important but not primary software programs, so you would find them typically, and you would load them typically into your utilities folder that all machines have. And so these these software programs are used to manage your fonts, to let you know when there are problems, they might become corrupted, and are used to load and unload fonts so that thousands of them are not taking up that oh so valuable RAM. And print shops, they might have, if they're organized, have a whole library of folders. And so when I come in and I bring a one of my clients' projects, I will actually usually bring the fonts, literally bring them with the document. But the point is that the print shops, they can go into their computer system and they go, oh, okay, Rick Rice dropped off a project, so let's load up his folder of fonts that he always uses for this client or that client. And so it really helps to minimize the difficulty of fonts and the amount of memory that they might take up. And also another important point with fonts is that the page layout software programs that some of you may be familiar with already, and that would be these days part of the Creative Suite, the CS Adobe programs have InDesign, and that's the primary page layout program that's used in the industry these days. Previously, in the early days, it was, some of you may remember, PageMaker, and then a company that for many years dominated the page layout and document design industry in the professional arena was Quark Express. And some of you may have heard of that. And then Adobe went back to the table again and created a brand new page layout program from the ground up, and has many of the attributes of Vector Illustrator and all of the toys and bells and whistles that typically page layout programs have had. And as part of that toolkit that these type programs have is within them they have tools that will gather all of the graphic files and gather all of the fonts that are needed for that document. We'll gather them up, and it's called packaging or collecting for output. It is an automated tool to gather all the pieces, parts that you need to take to a print shop, and it takes the guesswork out of the process because typically if you don't have the original graphic files and you don't have the fonts, then the document may not print, and certainly with the fonts, the printing company would have to substitute them, and creates all kinds of problems and issues. That is one of the things, the great things about PDFs, if they are made properly, and that means that you have to make a very high quality or press quality PDF, and it will encompass all of the image data and all of the font information. But if last minute changes and corrections need to be done, then you have to go back to the original files for these days in InDesign, and you may need to repackage it or go back to the original files, in other words, and not edit the PDFs. So there's still good reasons to have all of your original files as well as PDF, which is what I've always taught my students to put together when they are taking documents for professional output at a printing company. So it seems like a small issue, but in graphics it's really a rather large issue, and there are great tools and software programs that take the hassle out of the process and help you have a good, even workflow. And so be sure and learn the basics concerning fonts and font management in the work that you do. Thanks a lot. Have a great day. And once again, thanks for tuning in to the Rick Talks.